Okay, I think we're live. So welcome to Tamara's Closet today. I have a really special lady with me today.
It says
Sh
off air.
no, we're live. We're live. Yeah, we're live. So she's extremely talented and a smart young woman with me, and she's originally from Tel Aviv, Israel. At the age of 12, she moved with her family, though, to the United States, to Boston, and that's where she studied guitar at Berklee College of Music. And she graduated Summa Cum Laude in 2009. And while she was there, she actually founded her own band, the Nili Brosh Band, and played her original music in the New England area. And in 2010, she released her first album, Through the Looking Glass, which featured a guest appearance by the famed Andy Timmons. So she's also made guest appearances with Stu Ham, Guthrie, the Aristocrats, and has opened for Yngwie Malmsteen on his 2013 Spellbound U.S. tour. She's played with the Iron Maidens in many of their performances, and she actually became a member of the Tony McAlpine Band. And she's actually now celebrating her year anniversary for her album released in 2014, Matter of Perception. And I know that she's got some great plans in the works, and we'll talk about that today later. And she's also endorses Ibanez guitars, EMG pickups, the Xotic effects, and Dean Markley strings. So now I just want to go ahead and bring her out here, bring out this amazing woman who's with me. So I want to give a warm welcome to Nili Brosh. Nili, are you with me?
I'm still here. How are you? Good morning.
Good. Good morning. Last time we tried to get together, we had technical issues, so we're keeping our fingers crossed today. So, Neely, I'm going to jump right into it because I know I've got a lot of questions, and I wanted to ask you about when you were growing up. What was your first real exposure to music that you can remember that actually sort of ignited your passion?
Well, I can remember a lot of that. I mean, I kind of grew up in a house where everybody listened to music a lot, and I have older brothers, so they listened to a lot of stuff that I probably wouldn't have necessarily found out about at an early age. So I remember, things playing around the house like Queen and Pink Floyd and stuff like that, and I always liked it, before I knew that I wanted to play an instrument or anything. I just liked music, ran around humming melodies and stuff like that, and it all kind of went from there.
Well, now I know you have a brother that's a musician, right? But is your were your parents musicians at all, or?
No, they're not musicians, but like everybody likes music, they're into it, but we're the only two musicians in the family.
Yeah. Well, you graduated from Berklee in 2009, and I had read that you became the youngest faculty member in their summer guitar program, and yet you still found the time to come out with your first album in 2010. How did you accomplish all that?
Well, I mean, the timeline of everything kind of made sense because I actually started working on my first album while I was still in school. Um, and the summer programs are just over the summer, so it's not like they take your whole life away, So I kind of, juggled everything to the best of my ability, and the timeline just kind of happened to work out the way that it did. I think I actually finished that record like a few weeks after I graduated, so I was working on all of it at the same time.
Was there anything going on in school that inspired that first album?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it all happened at once. So I think, I was a young writer then, but the fact that I was going to school and had a lot of influences around me and a lot of classes that I could draw help from if I needed, and the fact that I had a band that I was gigging out with at the time, it all helped. It all kind of came together. I had a lot of resources that I could use for that first album, which was really helpful. That's probably what contributed to being able to do it all at once, you know?
Yeah. Well, when you were, when you were a kid, though, what was your first instrument that were you intrigued by the guitar really, really young?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to play guitar because my brother played guitar. So
Okay.
that's why I originally picked it up. And I mean, I think I had like literally one piano lesson or something, maybe two. So I guess technically you could say that's my first instrument, but I don't really count that. So yeah, I've only ever really played guitar. I wouldn't consider myself, like, I wouldn't say that I play any other instruments because, I mean, I really don't. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to disappoint you that I'm not like more than that, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people have starts with other things and then they move on to like what they end up doing professionally. But yeah, I had one path, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's great though, because you're so focused on it. But when you were doing that summer program and teaching, do you think that's what inspired your passion for teaching today, like you do now, or?
Um, I mean, I don't know that I ever even really thought about it in those terms. I really like teaching, but I it didn't like happen like, oh, I did this, now let me continue on to teaching. It was just something that like I've kind of always done, kind of fell into, and it just happens to still like accompany me today. It's part of what I do. I can't guarantee that it'll always be, but I'm enjoying it, and it's just a part of what I do. So I try not to think about it necessarily in terms of like, oh, I have a passion for this and this is what ignited it. It was just kind of, I think it's a natural part of the deal for a lot of musicians because the line between like learning and teaching in a way is like so thin that we kind of end up teaching even if we don't do it formally. We end up doing that if we are in a band with somebody or we get together with somebody. There's always kind of a natural aspect of teaching to it anyway. So I
Right.
try not to put it into like, you know, labels necessarily.
Yeah. Well, when you were in college, did you have someone that you really, that was really, I don't know, maybe mentored you or that you were strongly inspired by that you sort of followed at all or that
Yeah,
impacted your?
I mean, I had a lot of like that. I mean, like great teachers, great guitarists. I mean, a lot of great music teachers in general. I had a few guitar teachers in particular who really inspired me. Scott Terulli, Jonathan, Dunlop, and a lot of people took lessons from them if they played the kind of music that I play. And they were great because Berklee is very casual. It's
Mhm.
not like you don't have to adhere to like super strict like professor relationships. So we all kind of just became friends because everybody plays shows anyway, and so we played shows together, and it was a little bit more of like a friendly vibe, which I think in music is really important because you don't want it to be like really stiff and full of boundaries. It's a lot more helpful if you can just kind of hang out as friends. It's a lot easier to feel comfortable around people if you do that, which I think is important in music.
Yeah, well, I do too. I think anything artistic, it's better to be like that for
Yeah.
sure. You get more inspiration, I think, in that type of atmosphere. But your first debut instrumental album, Through the Looking Glass, I know features a guest appearance by Andy Timmons. How did you make that happen? And did you hook up with him through Ibanez or?
No, well, the my endorsing Ibanez actually came a few years later, so it had nothing to do with that. But I'm probably one of the biggest Andy Timmons fans ever, and especially especially when I was younger. And so, I had kind of like been in contact with him through pretty much fan mail when I was a lot younger, and then even before YouTube was around, I think like I made videos of myself playing his songs and like sent it to his like PO box, via like VHS cassette, you know what I mean? And so like I think he kind of like remembered me as one of the people who covers him, and especially when YouTube came around, it was a lot easier to start doing stuff like that. So I met him on and off at clinics that he did when he would come to Boston, and we kind of like stayed friends. So, so I was able to ask him for that when it was time to do my record, and luckily for me, he graciously accepted. So, lucky that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's really awesome. Well, when you joined the Tony McAlpine band touring I think you toured U.S., Europe, and Mexico. Didn't the two of you guys make an album together, or?
No, we never made a record together.
Didn't?
You know, no. I mean, typically when you're an instrumentalist, when you're a guitar player and you make instrumental records, unless you're hiring somebody to do a guest solo, there's really no need to have another guitar player there, because, you know, live you need another guitar player to cover all the parts that you have on the record. But when you're doing the record, I mean, he can just go and record all those parts. He doesn't need me for that, you know. I think he's quite capable of playing rhythm guitar parts if he wants to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we never did a record together. We did a live DVD together, but it was mostly live stuff. We never did a record.
That might be what I had read then, because I thought I had read something about that. So, well, that's great. Of the different musicians that you have worked with and toured with, or whatever, what tour or who actually would you say, I don't know, has been like the biggest influence, or maybe has made the biggest impact on you as a guitarist, but also as a just as a woman guitarist in the industry?
I mean, I can't, you know, it's hard to point it at one thing, because every experience, every tour, like, teaches you something, you know, and you kind of take different things from different people, especially because every gig that I've done was, even though it's kind of still within the same genre, it was really different experiences. But I mean, I guess if I had to choose, I would have to say Tony, because I was with him the longest, and we did a lot of stuff together. And also I was like very young and inexperienced when we started doing that. So I guess the biggest learning opportunity was there, because, you know, there were a lot of life lessons for me to be learned, you know, in my first big tour and stuff like that. So, I mean, I guess I would pick that. And just because, you know, he's someone who's such a virtuoso musician, it's impossible not to learn from them, especially when you're young. He doesn't need to like necessarily give me formal guitar lessons for that to happen. I can just be around him and play his music and just not even really try to do anything, and just improve a lot just by playing with somebody like that and being around them. So I guess I would have to choose that.
Yeah. Well, that was a great opportunity. Was it, when you started touring that young, was it like you thought it was going to be, or?
I mean, I had a lot of mixed feelings about what I thought it was going to be like. You know, it's hard to imagine that when you haven't done it. But at the time, especially, like, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, because I had all these notions in my head about how scary I thought touring is and how difficult I thought it would be, and I ended up having a really good time. So, you know, I mean, not every tour is created equal. It depends on a lot of things, but, you know, I had a great time.
That's awesome. Now, do you still maintain like contact with some of these great musicians that you've toured with?
Sure, of course. Yeah. Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
You become very close with people. You know, you become friends. It's kind of hard not to when you're like, you know, in close quarters for a while. I mean, you know, you end up having a lot of people in your life, so we may not talk like on a super regular basis, but of course, you know, I keep in touch with all those people.
Yeah, because most people, when they're going after a dream, no matter really what industry it's in, we often have at some point, maybe not always, and it can be different periods through your career, but lots of times we have someone I call a mentor, and sometimes a mentor doesn't have to be someone that you're even, to me, it doesn't have to be someone that you have constant contact with, and you may not even have a lot of contact with them at all. Maybe someone you admire. Is there someone that is like that in your life that you would call a bit of a mentor? Or
I mean, currently, I don't know. I mean, like I think Tony was that for me in a lot of
that?
ways,
Yeah,
Sure. But let's see. I don't know if like currently, because especially when you start working with people for a long time, like the relationship can change. The dynamic changes.
yeah,
So he was definitely that for me, but it's been a long time since we've gotten to do stuff like that.
yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
like when you hit, because like you hit obstacles, and we all need somebody to kind of keep pushing us, because there's always peaks and valleys when you're in a person who's going after a dream, and there's times where we feel like maybe we've hit that valley part where you just think, oh wow, nothing's happening for me, or I'm not pushing into a new level. Is there someone that sort of helps push you to that, like a go-to person? I
I
mean,
mean, I have a lot of like just really close friends who are musicians in the industry who I guess help in that regard more as just like personal friends and support system rather than necessarily like they're there for that purpose. I think you're lucky if you have a group of people in your life that you're close enough to call that kind of support system. So I would say I have that, but it's not like one person who necessarily influenced me specifically. It's just, the people who are close to me in my life. And, I really appreciate that. I don't know what I would do without it. Sure.
yeah. Well, that's great. That's awesome. Because we do need that. You need to have that support system, and and sometimes it can be your friends, and oftentimes it's not. So it's good that you
Right.
have that. But you've toured all around the U.S. I know with the Iron Maidens as well, and um, throughout Europe, I guess, with Tony McAlpine, and shared the stage with a lot of different people. How have you learned to juggle your personal life combined with all the tour? And the reason I asked is because I think it's a part of a musician's career that is very foreign to the average person, the person who just admires music, but they don't have any idea what is, they try to imagine that type of life, or someone who aspires to be a musician, and they have questions about how you juggle personal life with being on the road like that.
Well, I mean, first of all, you have to remember, like, I'm really not on the road all the time. And,
Right.
the tours that you're speaking of, I mean, again, they happen over the span of like a few years. It's not like, it wasn't like an everyday thing.
Right.
So that helps, because I do have a lot of time at home where I'm just like, a normal person and with just like a daily kind of routine. And I like that, I don't know if I want it to be like 100% all the time. But, when I am out and traveling, I am a worker, so um, so that I can get a lot done as far as my social life goes, just through my phone. I'm very good at that. So I do. I'm good at keeping in touch with people even if I'm away because I kind of like I'm always on my phone and I'm like go 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 with that. And I know a lot of my friends who are on the road all the time. It's what you all have to do. I mean, it's kind of amazing that we're at the age where technology is so great that you can keep in touch so immediately like that with people all the time with Skype and stuff like that. So that's definitely been a blessing for sure.
Right.
Of course,
Yeah.
it's not the real thing, but that's actually I do that a lot from home anyway. So there you go. It's just best you could do when you're not there. So.
Oh yeah. Do you like that part of this the I guess promoting yourself and this using social media, or have you found that to be a frustrating part? Because to me, it's got its good points and its bad points. It's great that we have social media now, but it's like you're everywhere. You got to be everywhere. There's so
Yeah.
many. And
Yeah, I
does
mean,
that?
I agree with you, like there's definitely a lot of stuff that I like about it and that I don't. I think when it's frustrated me is when I've looked at it like work. You know, if I treat it that way, I'm not gonna have fun with it. I'm not gonna like it. It's just gonna feel like a chore and like something that I have to do. And so I think that's why I like Instagram a lot now, because it feels like fun to me. You know, it feels like me doing this for myself, that I would be doing that anyway, you know, even if it didn't have some specific purpose. And I don't really use it with the purpose of like, you know, furthering my career. I'm just doing it as me, you know, just for fun. And I think that's why I enjoy that. But yeah, it can be frustrating sometimes, because I think, you know, as much as I love conversing with everybody and answering all the messages and everything, I think sometimes it's gotten to the point where people have an expectation on you to like be there all the time. And you know, it's you know, you're going to spread yourself too thin at some point. So sometimes it takes me maybe a little longer to get to all the messages, or you know what I mean, like there's certain things that, yeah, you know, people have to think a little bit more realistically about now, because they do expect you to be everywhere. You're right.
Yeah, they do. I mean, there's a new social media site popping up all the time, so it is a lot. But I know you know, I know you're not touring all the time now, but there may come a day where you have the opportunity to. I mean, sometimes things can literally happen overnight. Do you think you are prepared for that lifestyle change if touring and being on the road came to fruition, where it was a pretty big deal, a big change?
I mean, I think that's a pretty difficult question to answer until it
Yeah.
airs. You know, I'd like to think that I am, because I've done it, but I know that, you know, if you're making a change from like half the time to all the time, like that's probably a really big shift, and I'm not going to be able to guess what that's going to be like until my life changes like that. And I hope that it does one day. But, you know, I guess we'll have to speak then, you know.
Well, now I know you. I think you've been in a couple different magazines. I know one was Young Guitar, but I don't know what the other one was. How did? I have a picture of one here. Actually, I might have both of them. But
Oh,
was
that's
this?
an Indonesian magazine called Guitar Plus.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember everything, you know, there's been a lot of stuff, like,
yeah.
you know, but yeah, I remember that one
Uh-huh.
specifically.
Yeah, and there was another one. Maybe this was Young Guitar. I don't know. I know you probably can't remember all these.
No,
But
I think I think that's Vintage Guitar. Young Guitar is a Japanese magazine. It's all in Japanese.
yeah, okay. I didn't have a picture of that one. I believe that's right. I did see that. But how did you land those different opportunities? Did they contact you or?
It depends, you know, every one of them is different. You know, when you're promoting a record, you're really trying to go for as much press as possible. So, like I said, you know, each of them kind of happened differently. Sometimes they came to me, sometimes I go to them. You know, I just, again, just trying to hit as much press as possible when you know, you have a record coming out and you're trying to get people to know about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, now you're celebrating, well, it's a little over a year now, I think, your
Yeah.
anniversary of A Matter of Perception, but that was released in 2014. I wanted you to talk a little bit about that album and what the inspiration was behind it, and about the heavy rhythm sections in the album. You know, how it all came
Um,
together.
I mean, I don't know that there was necessarily like some big inspiration for it, other than like it was time for me to make my second album, and that was the music that happened at the time. Uh, you know, a lot of that stuff I was struggling with, because I didn't really like where I was writing wise at the time, and I was having a hard time with that. I was having a hard time like finishing the songs, because I didn't know how I felt about them. I didn't think that I liked them very much. So that was like my personal struggle with it, and that's what inspired the title. So if there's really an inspiration for anything in that record, it's really for the title, and how I, you know, had to kind of work through all that mental stuff to just, you know, work on the music and finish the music and get it to where I thought it was, you know, good, and that I liked it enough to, you know, to release it. And then, you know, the rhythm section, I'm very blessed to have. You know, it's obviously got a lot of, you know, I was lucky enough to have a lot of great players on there. And really what's amazing is that I was able to get all those people on there when all those people have, you know, really busy schedules. And it's part of why the record took so long, because I was waiting for the time where a lot of people were free to record. And it's not like we got, you know, we weren't getting everybody together at the same time, but just, you know, if one person's available to do it in December and the next person's available to do it in February, then the record's not going to come out until April. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it took a long time, but, you know, I chose to wait for a reason. And, you know, I'm really glad that I did that. I'm very lucky to have the people that I do.
Yeah. Well, has it been as successful as you wanted it to be? I mean, has it inspired you to want to move ahead and do another one? Or I mean, we learn. Go ahead.
Excuse me, what was the last part?
I mean, like, what did you learn from it that you'll take to the next, when you create your next album?
Okay, so this is kind of a few-part question. So let me
Okay.
Hey, I try not to go into it with expectations, because I think if you do, you're going to be disappointed, especially when you make an album. And that's something that, you know, even if it does really well, you know, selling records is not what it used to be like 20, 30 years ago. So my don't really lie there. It's more like, can I be pleased with the product that I've come up with? Like, that's my focus, because I want to think about it as an artist and not as a marketing person, you know? So I know that, you know, I knew that I wasn't going to release it until I was happy with it. So once I got to that point, you know, it was fine. I accepted it, and that's it, and kind of on to the next one. So, you know, with the reception's been good, so I'm, you know, very fortunate. I'm, you know, really grateful for that. It taught me a lot about what not to do on the next one, and like how to not waste as much time as I did, because even though I was waiting for a lot of things, I also wasted some time. Like, there are things that I could have done more efficiently, that would have saved me time and work that I'm not gonna do on the next one. And I am writing now. You know, I don't know when I'm gonna make another record or what it's gonna end up being or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, you know, there will be another one. It's just now that I have two out, I don't feel as bad, like, you know, waiting a little longer. So
yeah. No, that's great. Well, I wanted you to talk about, because I know you play like a 7-string guitar, 2 different models. And I was watching a video, you were talking about the RG Premium 927 quilted maple top, and then the other one was the RG Prestige 1527 maple. Why did you choose these 2 guitars? Was there, you know, because I know we've got some guitar fans that are watching this interview, so
well, I wanted, you know, the premium and the prestige models are both like high-end Ibanez guitars for this kind of music. And I guess at the time, like, I wanted to have one of each, and I wanted to have, you know, one guitar that has a maple fretboard and one that has a rosewood fretboard. So, you know, those were good choices for each, and they were similar enough that they weren't going to be vastly different, but the differences were small enough so that I can have like little differences in tone. You know, like when you have like maple versus rosewood, like that contributes to that quite a bit. So it was just so that I can have 2 instruments that were like high-end and similar enough, but had these small differences, so that I feel like I have a little bit of variety, you know, while I'm kind of doing the same thing in a way. You know what I mean? Because I you know, there's variety in my music, but mostly I play a specific. I'm not necessarily gonna need like something as like a one or two things that kind of came from the same. So it worked well for that.
Yeah. Well, I had read that you had to, I'm getting a lot of feedback now. I read that you had to pick up the 7-string for Tony McAlpine's gig, and you had to actually learn it pretty quickly. But then you actually chose to stay with the 7 string. How complicated was it to make that switch from playing the 6 string to 7 string?
Well, I mean, to learn kind of fast because, you know, I had an audition that required one, and I just needed to kind of like put it together. That, I mean, I felt like I could play the songs that I was being auditioned on, and that was it. You know, I might have gotten like a little lost if I was trying to like to my instrument, but because you know, I auditioned and had a gig where I needed to use that kind of instrument, it just became my main guitar because that's what I was doing at the time. So, you know, after that, I got so used to it that, you know, I just stayed used to it, and you get used to having an extra string and an extended range, and your ideas kind of follow suit, and you end up needing that because now you have access to it and you start playing stuff that requires it. So it's kind of hard to go back sometimes. So I just stay with it. I mean, I do still have 6 string guitars. I actually just got my first hollow body, which is a 6 string, and I'm like really happy with it. So it's good to be able to do both and not, you know, feel like I'm really hindered if I'm going back to like, you know, a regular 6 string guitar. It's just temperaments are for different things.
Yeah, so the 7 string gives you that extra low octave, and so as you're saying that once you kind of get used to that,
yeah, I mean it's basically go that far below what what 6 string lets you do. It's really just, you know, it's not as low as people think it is. It's definitely not a whole octave, but it gives you a little bit more, yeah.
Okay. And then you're saying you get used to it, you start, you know, writing music where you tend to want to use that more, the 7 string. Yeah. Okay. Well, there was an effect I wanted you to talk to a little bit about that you were using when you were demonstrating the Ibanez guitars, and you were using the tremolo bar, and I hope I'm saying that right, which gives you that trembling effect. Is that something that you use a lot, you know, and I don't know if you can demonstrate it or not.
I actually don't use it a lot, and it's a pretty standard part of those kind of guitars. You know, it's a part of most guitars, especially with Ibanez guitars. It's like I'm not like a big tremolo bar person. It was really just for that, like, a little bit of a different kind of vibrato. But you want to explore players who like really use that as an effect and really part of their playing, then, you know, I would suggest, you know, checking out players like Steve Vai, who've really just made an art form out of that. You know, it's not really a big part of my playing. You know, it's just like an understated thing in that particular.
Okay. I lost you for just a second, but I wanted to go back to the teaching because I thought it was really pretty fascinating that you are teaching lessons online, and you're doing that via Skype, I guess. And
yeah.
So how long have you been doing that? And has that been a pretty good way for students to learn online like that?
Yeah. I've been doing it for probably about 4 years now, something like that, maybe even a little longer. I've done more Skype lessons than I can remember. I think I remember all my students that I've had, but I've done a lot by now. I mean, I think if it hadn't worked, I wouldn't have been doing it for so long. I mean, obviously, it's got its pros and cons. You're not there in person. There's certain things that you can't really do. Like, you can't really jam with your students in real time because you always have like that Skype time delay thing. But there's a lot that you can get done, and it's kind of amazing that, you know, we have the technology to do stuff like that now, because I have students from all over the world, and, you know, it's really a privilege to be able to do that. And I'm not the person who came up with it. You know, that thing existed way before I decided that I should try taking advantage of it. But
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I would like to think that my students have gotten something out of it. I've definitely gotten a lot out of it. Like, you know, I learn a lot from my students, and I learn a lot as a teacher. I mean, it's definitely given me a lot of experience as a teacher. So I learn from it every day, and I'm blessed to have students who are great, and I have a lot of students who have been with me for several years now, and they've, you know, just kind of become friends and people that I'm used to seeing every week, and it's great. I love it. You know, it's a really nice little part of my day.
Yeah. Have you got some that like are wanting to learn to play the 7-string guitar? Are you doing that with them?
Yeah, I mean, some of them do. I don't, again, like, I don't really treat the 7-string as like, as if it's like a whole another
Yeah.
thing. You know, I just kind of cater to like whatever that particular student might like, or, you know, whatever instrument they might have. And sometimes it's a 7-string, sometimes it isn't. But I'm actually lucky that I have students who are, you know, good enough to not be confused by the fact that I have an extra string if they don't. You know, like, I always thought that was going to be more confusing to them, but people always surprise me that it doesn't. I guess it's not as bad as you would think. You know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an awesome opportunity. I think the internet has really opened up a lot of doors for people in every industry, the people that are, you know, using it and taking advantage of it. But I did, somewhere in my research, I read you were doing some fusion writing with John Richard. Are are there any plans to do something together in an album there? And what style of music are you fusing? Whatever.
Well, when you say fusion in those terms, most people mean rock and jazz. So
Right.
that's like usually what people mean when they say fusion. We actually have another band together called Vigilant, it's like a 4-piece rock band with a singer named Chloe Demetria and drummer named Paget Nanton, and we're doing a record. It's the band's second album. I wasn't on the first one; they had another guitar player, but we're doing a record together now. So that's kind of taking the bulk of the time that John and I have to, you know, to really commit to that thing. I mean, I would love to do the fusion thing with him in the future because we've written little things here and there. We've done a couple videos and we love working together. So I'm sure that when the time is right, we'll hopefully do that too.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, since you formed your new band, now you did that, right? You formed a new band, right? I guess about a year ago. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you have? Are you going to tour again with your band? Continue to tour with that band and do a solo album together, or?
Well, again, I'm not sure what my plans are for my next record, but you know, my last one's really, you know, it's been a year, but that's really not that long. And
No.
we have, you know, we've been doing a lot of stuff in the last few months. So yeah, I hope to continue to play live with them. They're a really good group of guys. You know, I'm hoping to just kind of like extend out into the US and you know, see what we can do together. It'd be great.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So what, I know you don't have any big plans right now for another album, but you obviously eventually will, but you've obviously got some momentum going. Have you got some kind of plan in the future, like that you're wanting to more play in your area, or would you prefer to travel a little bit down the road?
I would love to do everything, you know.
Everything.
I'm not closing any doors, you know. We'll see what, you know, ends up working out the best, but you know, it's kind of hard to say at this moment because, you know, it's hard to kind of put concrete plans to one thing when you don't know what's going to end up making the most sense for you. But, you know, of course I would love to do anything and everything that, you know, gets my music out there.
Right, exactly. Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you, Nili, was what kind of advice, I guess, would you give to someone who wanted to embark on this similar journey in the music industry? You know, what would you give advice to someone who aspires to do what you're doing?
I guess I would tell them that if you're doing it for any reason besides the music itself, I think you might end up being a little disappointed. I think it's the kind of thing that, you know, you should really only do if you feel like you can't think of anything else that you could do. You know, if you feel compelled to do it as if it's the only option that you think you have, that's really the one reason. You know, if you're not doing it with the music as the primary reason and the priority, then you may as well not be doing it, because it's challenging enough just to be a musician, and you really want to be doing it for the right reasons. And so I think if you focus on the music and you're doing it for the love of it, and, you know, again, you just, that's your purpose, is the music itself, I think the rest, you know, usually finds a way to take care of itself.
Yeah. Well, that's good advice. I think that's good advice. Well, was there anything else you wanted to add today, Nili, that we didn't cover? Or
I mean, you know, I think we did good. I think we covered a lot of stuff.
okay.
So, yeah.
Because I wanna thank you again for being here, because you really are extremely talented, and I know that when we had our last attempt at this interview, you had already gotten some new fans, so I was glad to hear that. And so, you know, you're getting exposed, and I want to stay in touch and see how, you know, it's going to be fun watching how things progress for you. I also want to, you know, just thank you again for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yo, you're welcome. And I want to thank the viewers for their continued support and being here, whether you're seeing it live or the replay. There will be a replay of this in my blog at tamarahscloset.com. And her tours, I think I made a little, it's just NiliBrosh.com. That's BROSH. And I think am I saying it right, Nili Brosh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, and so make sure you go to her. She's also on several different social media sites. I know Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for sure. And this Friday, I'll be interviewing a fantastic artist from California, Leslie Ann Webb, who paints the most beautiful and colorful rendition of a horse. So join me Friday at the same time at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for my live interview with Leslie. And also follow my blog, because I'll have an article about Nili, and I'll just keep adding to it as I see updates with new things that are going on with her in her career as well. So thanks again for your continued support, and to your success, keep on rocking it, and see you in Tamarah's Closet next time. Thanks.